Good Monday morning. I wanted to do something a little bit different today. I am pre-recording today's session, and I'm going to ask you to do me a little bit of a favor. I pre-recording a couple weeks early when this comes out. I'll have actually already done this presentation, but I'm asking you today to sit with me and allow me to kind of practice a presentation, a speech actually that I'll be giving at the Military Influencer Conference on Tuesday, September 23rd. I am giving a speech called Beyond the Price Tag, Navigating Global Trade and Economic Shifts for Entrepreneurs. And I was invited to come speak at the Military Influencer Conference because I had spoken a little bit about tariffs and all the things kind of that will be in this presentation at a little virtual event for boutique owners a few months back. And the organizer of it is also one of the organizers of MIC. And also one of my very best friends is one of the organizers of MIC. So I had a little bit of a, not what you know, but who you know kind of moment. And I am always so honored to be able to do anything for the military community. A lot of our clients and members come from the military community. It is just such a blessing, and it's such a good community to have friends in, because I don't know, the military community to me, even though I'm not a member, has always been just so kind, so welcoming, so family oriented. Like, we believe that our friends who are in the military are actually our chosen family, and just the love and support and compassion that we get through this community is so special to me. So when they asked me to come to Atlanta to speak at the Military Influencer Conference, it was not even a question, like, absolute yes, whatever I can do, please let me know. So I'm flying there on Saturday, and will be giving my speech on Tuesday, while I also get to attend this amazing event that's built for military and veterans to understand more about the entrepreneurial world and building their own businesses and their own companies. And so I'm truly honored to be heading there. And I'd love for you to just sit with me today and allow me to go through a little bit of my presentation. So this might be a little bit of a longer episode than usual. I hope you don't mind sticking with me. So thanks for being here, and let's jump right into it. So today we're going to talk a little bit about global trade and economic shifts for entrepreneurs. And before we jump in, I just want to really quick let you know who I am and how did I end up here at the Military Influencer Conference. So my mission is to help apparel brand owners build successful apparel companies from the ground up. I have a fashion design degree from the University of Cincinnati that I got another life ago, it feels like, back in 2007. And I've been in the corporate apparel industry ever since. I spent 15 years working as a technical designer, doing pattern engineering, and working on the creative side of the business. And in 2018, I was invited to come be on the product management side of the company that I was at. So they asked me to come in, learn revenue planning, learn line planning, learn the financial side of everything. And I will tell you right now that I did not want to learn any of that information. I was really happy. I loved being a technical designer, and I still love being a technical designer because I still do it today. But what I learned by becoming a product manager and stepping into that business leadership role and being able to sit at the executive tables as a business leader of my category is something that I would not have gotten as just a technical designer. And it helped me learn so much more about this industry. It helped me learn what I needed to know to be able to go out and start my own business. So one word that I never thought would dominate my career is finances. I was actually always kind of good at math in school, but I was actually really happy to test out of it when I went to college. I didn't want to take math. Like, I didn't want to be dealing with any of that. I wanted to be creative. But like I said, learning this skill has led me to navigating tariffs and becoming an expert in helping my clients successfully navigate global economic shifts every single day. So the stuff that I've learned by being in those roles and by being forced to keep my ear to the ground when it comes to tariffs and everything that's going on in the global economy has been super powerful for all of my different clients and the members of my groups that I run. So what is the connection? Why am I here? I believe that entrepreneurship really demands strategy, intelligence, and adapting to changing in any condition. My story isn't just about fashion. It's about facing unpredictable external forces and turning them into a strategic advantage. So how do we take what's happening out in the world and build it into our companies so that we also become risk averse and we have plans on paper that helps us mitigate anything that can be thrown our way. So in today's agenda, during this quick little speech, I don't have a ton of time to chat with you today. We'll probably go for about 30 minutes. And then I do want to open it up to Q&A because I know this topic can be a little bit confusing. And I know that there are a lot of questions that have come my way through our communities, through different social media platforms. So I want to leave that open. But we're going to go through the spark, the real world story of learning how to navigate global trade changes, how that happened for me. We're going to go through the details. What are tariffs, duty rates, and how do they apply to our businesses? We're going to go through the playbook then. How do we build resilient business models in any economic shift? And last, we'll go through a wrap up where I'm just going to take you through some key takeaway topics that I hope you take away from today and then any next action steps for you and your company. So like I said, when I started my career, finances, math, and spreadsheets were the farthest from my desired career goals. But in 2018, after more than a decade working as a technical designer, I was asked to move into that management and business leadership role. So I had to learn this information, even if I didn't want to. And again, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And in that last year in my corporate role, it was really, really remarkable. Everything that I was learning in this financial side of the business was helping us grow and scale faster than ever before. So by having my brain kind of turn on to this side of things, we actually went from a $25 million business to a $60 million business in a single year, just by learning these different tactics, learning the processes that I now know, and being able to apply those finances to our bottom line and build a plan that actually worked so much better than it ever had in the past. In 2021, I started my very own business called Unmarked Street, and that is based on Dr. Seuss's book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. So if you've read the book, there's a page that says, you will come to a place where the streets are not marked. And that really resonated with me when I was starting my company. I think it also really resonates with the clients that I serve and the members who are in my groups who aren't quite sure where to go next. Building an apparel business is very, very difficult, just like building any business is very, very difficult. And being an entrepreneur takes a lot of guts, it takes a lot of nerve, it takes a lot of hard work. And so when I ended up at that unmarked street, I wasn't sure exactly where I was going to be going, but I knew I needed to have a plan in place. I knew I needed to forge ahead. And so that's what I named my company. Since then, I have also founded the Business of Apparel, which is the education business that I own, where we work with startup brand owners and brand owners who are just emerging into their millions of dollars to help them understand how to build strategy and how to build SOPs and processes into their companies like billion-dollar brands. So, what are tariffs and duty rates? Now, duty rates have been in our global trade law since 1789. The Tariff Act of 1789 actually helped the U.S. pay back its war debt at the time. And so while it was called the Tariff Act of 1789, we have traditionally referred to them as duty rates in the apparel industry. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It varies based on many, many factors. So for example, in my world, your duty rate, the percentage that you are going to pay on top of a unit that you import into the United States is going to depend on who your customer is. Is it a men's item, a women's item? Is it a children's item? What kind of fabric is it made from? Is it a natural fiber or is it a man-made fiber? What kind of features does it have? Does it have a full center front zipper? Can you totally open the garment, or is it not able to do that? Do you have to pull it on over your head? Who is the exporter? So am I exporting it from Mexico? Am I exporting it from China? Am I exporting it from Vietnam? And then the importer also matters. And so I work with most of my clients who import into the US, but if you're importing into a different country, that is going to change up your duty fees. And this has just been a part of business for a really long time. I had to learn and memorize a lot of different duty rates and percentages throughout my career. Like I can tell you right now that a cycling jersey made of polyester fibers for a man is going to cost you 32% as the base duty rate coming from China to the United States. Also coming from Italy to the United States, also coming from Vietnam to the United States, also coming from Portugal to the United States. So that 32% duty rate is something that is built into our HTS code system at the United States government level. And those tariffs and those duty fees are paid by the importer, us. So we pay those fees when those goods come into the United States. It's something that US businesses are paying in addition to the tariffs that are now in place too, are something that the US businesses are paying on top of those duty rates. It's not in place of. I want you to know that too. So the tariffs are not replacing duty rates, they're being added to duty rates. What this does, so this promotes localization, and that's the point, we believe, of adding all of these different tariffs to a bunch of different products from all over the world. We want to promote more US manufacturing. And some industries are able to pivot into local manufacturing a lot easier than others. And the apparel industry is one that can be really difficult to pivot into because there's not a lot of fabric manufacturing. There's very little, almost no trim manufacturing, like zippers and buttons and things like that aren't really made here. There are some garment manufacturers, but very few of them are big enough to be able to scale into thousands of units. Most of the garment manufacturers that we have in the US are able to help small startup brands in a great way because they offer low minimum order quantities. They can make small amounts of units, maybe a few hundred to 1,000. But when you need to scale into ordering 5,000, 10,000, more and more units as your company grows, a lot of the time these US manufacturers aren't big enough to be able to handle those kinds of orders, which is why many big companies and many emerging companies need to move their manufacturing outside of the United States. So again, tariffs are being added to our duty rates. We're not replacing duty rates. These are new fees in addition to them. So to show you just a real quick, real world example of what might be happening, these are different scenarios that I've actually truly gone through with some of my clients recently. So we had a men's $100 jersey from Italy. The cost of that jersey was $25. The previous duty rate and the current duty rate is 32%, like I said before. We now have a 15% tariff on top of that. And when we calculate all of that out and put that into our spreadsheets, our previous margins before we had the 15% tariff was a 66% margin on every single unit that we sold. Now we're only seeing a 62.25% margin. So we've seen about a 4-point reduction in margin points on that style. Another client that I have has a women's $75 top coming in from Peru. The cost of that garment is $20. Previously, to produce in Peru, because of the CAFTA agreements that we had and different agreements throughout the Americas, we were bringing in those goods at a 0% duty rate. It was very advantageous. Now there's a 10% tariff on top of that. So previously we were able to get a 72% margin on that garment, and now we're only getting a 69.33% to be exact, margin on that garment. Another client was making kids shorts from Canada, selling them for $35. The cost of those shorts was $15. Again, a duty rate previously due to NAFTA was 0%. We're adding that 35% duty or tariff on top of that right now. Now, Canada and Mexico are a little bit in flux at the moment. So this is something that we can kind of talk through, and something we will talk a little bit more about, but things are changing really fast right now. There is a new United States, Mexico, Canada agreement that is in place. And if you use all of your goods, so all of your fabrics, all of your zippers, all of your elastics, all of your buttons, your draw code quality, you name it, every single bit and bob that goes into that garment, if it is actually made in Canada, the United States, or Mexico, and you manufacture your garment there, you can go back to a 0% duty rate. But there is a lot of documentation that is going to have to happen to prove that all of your goods come from the North Americas. So right now, we're still assuming that most people are going to see that 35% tariff coming from Canada. If you are able to source all of those pieces, or maybe you're able to make a really simple garment where you really just need to source a fabric, you can go back down to that 0% duty rate. So we're starting to see some things change and shift. And this is kind of what's been happening for the last 6 to 7 months. The 2024 margin on that kid short was 54%, but now they're only seeing a 39% margin, which gets into like a little bit of a danger zone if you're in the apparel world. So the question here is, do you absorb the cost and lose profits? Do you take these lower margins, or do you raise prices and risk losing customers to hold your profit margin steady? And this is the big question that every owner now faces by seeing these different impacts on their bottom line. So there's also a bunch of hidden impacts. So it's not just all about dollars, right? We are seeing some supply chain disruption where your reliable supplier that you've been using maybe for many, many years, you've built a great relationship with them. Maybe now they're too expensive for you to actually use. And so you're having to figure out how to pivot and how to shift in a very rapid pace. There's some sourcing instability that's going on. The search for new partners can be really, really risky. And it is very time consuming, especially in the apparel industry. If you are moving one garment from a manufacturer in Mexico to a new manufacturer in Vietnam, let's say, that wouldn't necessarily be favorable right now. I'm just throwing out examples. That can be very time consuming. It's very rarely a one-to-one swap. Even if you have a pattern file and you have a garment that you can send to this new Vietnam manufacturer to say, I just need to copy this, a lot of times it doesn't translate 100%. And so you still have to go through prototyping rounds and you have to go through iterations and you still have to approve it until it gets to a point where it actually matches that old style that was made in Mexico. So it can be very, very time consuming to move your sourcing strategy. We're starting to see a lot of strained relationships where difficult conversations about price increases with your customers, with your clients, with your manufacturers are having to be had. And a lot of people, again, going back to cash flow crunches, where you're paying higher cost upfront before you've even made a single sale. So you're getting that additional bill now when you're actually importing the goods. Before, you would get a bill from your manufacturer, you would get a bill for your duty rate, and you would get a bill from your freight forwarder or your shipping company. Now you might be getting an additional bill for the additional tariffs, and it can be very, very expensive depending on where you are actually importing goods from. We've heard of a couple people who are basically saying shipping and fees and tariffs are actually now more expensive than the actual goods that I'm importing. So all of those additional fees are causing quite a lot of anguish. And this is more than t-shirts. I get it. I'm talking up here about apparel, and you might not have anything to do with the apparel industry. So let's say you're a tech founder, a consultant, or a creator in any other number of businesses. And why should this matter to you? Because tariffs are just one type of external force. We've been talking a lot about that this year, but it's just one of many things that can happen in the global economy. It's just a really good example right now because it's so relevant. The principles of navigating tariffs and global economic shifts apply to every single industry. So I want to explore how this might apply to some different industries. Let's say you're a tech entrepreneur. So the external force might be tariffs on electronic components, or the new data privacy regulations that are coming in from the EU, where they're basically saying there are a lot of new privacy laws protecting their citizens in the EU that no matter where you are, if you want to have customers in the EU, you have to comply with. So the impact on all of that can be increased hardware costs. The servers you rely on or the components in your device suddenly cost more because of those tariffs, which can be very similar to the apparel industry. You might see delayed product launches if your supply of a critical chip is disrupted, or you're not seeing anything happening in the way of fast manufacturing because people are worrying so much about what's going on in the economy. It actually can be a distraction and it can cause delays in the entire supply chain. You'll also see shifting compliance burdens. So now new regulations force expensive changes to your software and operations. And it's not just you now having to deal with paying a little bit more for the goods you're importing, but you're starting to see that you're paying for more changes in other ways as well. All of these different regulations that are being added, especially in the EU at the moment. Let's say you're a service provider. So at Unmarked Street, we are a service provider as well. We don't just help our clients deal with their importing of goods and the creation of their goods, but we also have to deal with how it looks to be a service provider to them. I'm basically a freelancer or a consultant. And so when I offer those services, these are the kinds of things that we're dealing with. So if you're considering consulting in some way and lending your expertise to other people, these are things that could absolutely hit you. Those external forces are economic uncertainty caused by these trade disputes. And so you might see that your clients are cutting their budget. They're facing their own cost increases, and non-essential spending, like you as a consultant, might be cut. You might see shifting client needs. So businesses are no longer focused on growth, but on survival and cost cutting. You might need to see an opportunity to pivot. An entrepreneur who understands these pressures can shift their services to focus on risk management, supply chain consulting, or efficiency, making you more and more essential, which is something that we've been able to do at the Business of Apparel and Unmarked Street. Even me speaking here today is because I have been able to keep my ear on the ground, be very, very up to date with what's going on in our industry about all of this global economic shift. And it makes me more valuable to my customers and to my clients. And so leaning into some of this stuff and learning a little bit more about it can be really important for you at this phase. So the real challenge isn't a specific tariff or regulation. It's the uncertainty. It's not knowing what could possibly happen tomorrow with everything that's changing. And in any complex environment, you have to plan for contingencies. You're going to gather information. You're going to build resilient teams. Business is no different. We must build resilient organizations that can withstand shocks that we can't predict. So how do we build resiliency? We can't control global policy, but we can control our response. A resilient business isn't one that avoids every single crisis. It's one that's built to withstand, adapt, and even thrive in the face of them. And here are 4 essential strategies. I'm going to walk you through them. Number 1, you want to diversify your supply chain. Now, this is something that I would not have really recommended, especially in the apparel industry 2 years ago. The old way has been finding one great supplier and sticking with them, building a great relationship, making sure that you have account people on both sides who are essentially building friendships, building business relationships that can last a really long time. That was the old way. And that's how I recommended to a lot of my clients for a really long time how they build their relationship with their manufacturers. But the resilient way, and the way that we're starting to recommend that our clients shift to, is building a network of trusted partners in different regions. What this does for them is it reduces dependency on any single country. It provides flexibility when one channel is disrupted, and it creates a competitive advantage. So the goal here is to avoid single points of failure. So if your one manufacturer that you love working with has been in Vietnam all of this time, you might find that all of a sudden Vietnam tariffs are the highest of all the different tariffs that we could be encountering. If you've diversified your supply chain and you actually have different manufacturers in different places, you can pull different levers and start to put styles that have traditionally been in your Vietnam manufacturer to these different areas and take advantage of the lower tariffs in these different areas. So right now, we are starting to encourage our clients to diversify and find different areas in which they can manufacture and possibly even double manufacture certain goods, especially if they're high selling goods. So if you have an item on your shelf or an item on your online shop that is like selling like hotcakes, it is your best seller, you might want to have a couple different places that can actually manufacture that good at the quality standard that you expect, so that if something happens, you can push into one area and pull out of another pretty quickly. You want to know your true costs. So go beyond the surface with your costs under every single component of your cost of goods sold or your COGS. You need to know your raw materials and manufacturing labor. You need to know your fees, tariffs, and duty rates. You need to know your freight, shipping, and your warehousing fees. When you know exactly where every dollar goes, you know where you're most vulnerable and where you can adapt. This is just like running a business. You have to know your numbers as the CEO of your company. You have to know what's going in, what's coming out every single month, every single year from your business so that you can manage it. If you're spending too much on a certain thing, you need to be able to manage it. If you're not making enough sales, you need to be able to manage it. As a developer in the apparel industry, I had to learn costing pretty early on, and we would get what we would call bills of material or cost breakdown sheets. Both of them kind of go together. And we would have to have line items of every single item that goes into every single garment and cost it out individually so that we could break down our cost and know maybe what was blowing up the cost on a certain item was a zipper that we really, really wanted. And by switching to a different kind of zipper, we could save $2 on every single garment. And that might boost our margin into a place where all of a sudden we were being more profitable. So those are the kinds of things that you need to know. You need to know every single true cost that's going into your business. Number 3 is to stress test your business. I want you to run scenarios for your business. Ask the question, what if? Before it happens. What if our primary supplier becomes unavailable? What if shipping costs double? What if a new regulation grounds our key import? Develop contingency plans for your most critical vulnerabilities up front. Don't let a crisis be the first time you think about a response. And the way that I really like to talk about this and even do this inside my business is when I do my financial planning. When I'm like planning for 2026, we just went through a whole thing for my business where we put a financial plan for 2026 down on paper. And we did what the first step, which was a very realistic business plan. We know what kind of income we'll have coming in from current clients who have promised to stay for the next year in 2026, and what sales we can absolutely predict for the year. Also, what spending do we absolutely predict for the upcoming year? That's budget number one. Budget number two, I always recommend that you do a pie in the sky goals. Like, what is something, if you were to build your dream life, and what would it cost, and what would I need to sell, and what would I need to decrease my spending on to be able to make that happen? That's budget number two. But budget number three is always a worst case scenario. And that's where this stress testing your business comes in. If you can build a worst case scenario budget for your brand, and you can look at what would happen if I lost these clients, what would happen if I had to spend a little bit more here and there, what would happen if the costs of all of these things went up. If you can do that inside your business early, and you know what kind of decisions you would have to make as a CEO to overcome those difficult decisions, that is going to set you up for so much more success than so many other business owners in your space. Not enough people are doing that work up front and then building those contingencies in. Know what those decisions would need to be. And then step number four is to build your information network. The best advantage is early information. And you're sitting right here today learning this information from me, right? So you're already one step ahead of most people, but I want you to stay informed. I know right now, I hear from a lot of people that it's really hard for them to actually pay attention to the news and to be reading all the different publications on what's going on. It can be really stressful, but I really, really recommend that if you are running a business, you have to stay informed on all of this stuff. Read the trade publications and articles for your industry and for global logistics. Understand what's going on in the world. Build your network. Your peers are your best source of real-time information. What are they seeing and how are they reacting to what's going on? Leverage communities. Events like MIC are invaluable. The person sitting next to you might have the insight that saves your business next year. And so networking and coming to different things like this can be so, so important. So I just want to give you guys a huge shout out for being here today and for wanting to learn all of this information about your business. So the key takeaways from today: look beyond the price tag. External forces like tariffs have deep hidden impacts on your entire business operation, not just on your costs. The ripple effect is real. The principles of navigating trade policy apply to every single industry, from tech to services. The challenge is universal. Resilience is a strategy. You can build a business that is prepared to withstand and adapt to shocks by diversifying, knowing your costs, planning for contingencies, and building up your network. Uncertainty creates opportunity, believe it or not. By understanding the challenging landscape, you can pivot faster than your competition, turning external challenges into a unique competitive advantage. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that saying that the most millionaires are made during recessions. This is that idea, where if you can figure out how to not just survive during hard times, but thrive in them as things shift and when things get better, because they will and they always do. And as the global economy kind of pendulum swings back into a certain way, you will be set up for so much more success than any of your competitors. In the apparel industry right now, for example, my clients are building this resiliency into their brands, and they're watching a lot of their competitors shut their doors. A lot of brands are shutting down. They're not surviving this space, but the people who are figuring it out will be left standing and will be set up for so much more growth and success. So that is my presentation today. Thank you so, so much for being here with me. I've left about 10 minutes for questions, and so I'd love to hear them. What do you guys think? I'd love to hear your comments on my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Let me know what you think. Put them in the comments below. This was definitely my first practice run. Actually, I need to get myself in gear, probably do a couple more runs and make sure I'm ready to go for next week. But thank you for doing this with me here today. This was incredibly helpful. I hope maybe you learned something in this too. And so even though you might not be at the Military Influencer Conference, you got to learn the same stuff that I'll be talking about while I'm there. Have a wonderful week ahead. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday. And thanks for being here with me today.